10 reasons why the Pontiac GTO is a legendary muscle car. Have you ever wondered how one bold idea could spark a revolution? Nearly 60 years ago, Pontiac did just that with the legendary GTO. While many call it the first muscle car, the truth is, beasts like the '57 Rambler Rebel and even the '32 Ford Tudor came before. But what really set the GTO apart was how it changed the game. Back then, big V8s were only meant for full-sized cars, until John DeLorean broke the rules in 1964 by dropping a 389 CID V8 into the mid-sized Tempest. That daring move didn't just create the GTO, it lit the fuse for a muscle car era we still celebrate today. It broke displacement rules. Back in the early 60s, GM and other car makers followed an unofficial rule. Big engines belonged only in big cars. But John DeLorean didn't see why that had to be. He believed young buyers wanted power without the extra weight. So in 1964, his team dropped the big 389 CID V8 into the mid-sized Tempest, creating the very first GTO. It wasn't just a random experiment. DeLorean knew exactly what he was doing. Borrowing proven parts from Pontiac's existing lineup kept costs low, and keeping the GTO as a performance package skirted GM's own engine size restrictions for mid-sized cars. The result? A street-legal beast that went from 0-60 in about 6.6 seconds, shockingly quick at the time. Almost overnight, other GM brands scrambled to do the same, and soon Ford, Chrysler, and AMC joined the horsepower war. The GTO didn't just bend the rules, it rewrote them. 9. It popularized the muscle car. While it wasn't technically the first, the GTO was the car that made muscle car a household phrase. It proved there was a market for raw power packed into a smaller, lighter frame. When Pontiac introduced the GTO in 1964, they expected to sell about 5,000 units. Instead, they sold over 32,000 that first year alone. That shocked even Pontiac's own executives. Its popularity made rival brands jump in fast. By 1966, you had cars like the Chevelle SS 396, Dodge Charger, Plymouth GTX, and Ford Fairlane GT competing for the same buyers. Suddenly, Detroit's streets were flooded with muscle cars. The GTO was more than a sales success. It became the spark that kicked off a golden era. And it all started because Pontiac dared to think differently. 8. Big block power. Ask anyone who grew up around these cars and they'll tell you the magic was under the hood. The original GTO offered the mighty 389 CID V8, with up to 348 horsepower if you opted for the tri-power setup. 3 two-barrel carburetors that gave it an extra kick. And Pontiac didn't stop there. Later years brought even bigger engines like the 400 CID V8 in 1967 and the fearsome 455 CID HO, high output, introduced in 1970. That engine delivered neck-snapping torque and a sound that turned heads from blocks away. At the time, numbers on paper only told half the story. What really mattered was that visceral feeling, the rumble through the steering wheel, the vibration in your chest, and the way the world blurred when you floored it. For many, it wasn't just about horsepower, it was about the experience of driving something built to go fast. 7. Performance that changed expectations. When the first GTO appeared, most cars with big engines were full-sized and heavy, more suited for long cruises than quick sprints. The GTO flipped that thinking on its head. Thanks to its relatively lighter mid-sized body, it had an impressive power-to-weight ratio. It could keep up with or even beat many pricier European sports cars of the day in a straight line. Throughout the late 60s, GTOs stayed competitive on the street and at the drag strip. Even as insurance costs and stricter emissions rules started choking muscle cars in the early 70s, the GTO's reputation for speed was already set in stone. It proved you didn't need a luxury badge to go fast, you just needed guts, a big engine, and a smart design. 6. Styling that balanced muscle and class. The GTO wasn't just about performance, it looked the part too. Take the 1965 model. Stacked headlights, clean lines, and a purposeful hood scoop. It managed to look aggressive without being overdone, muscular yet tasteful. As the years went by, the GTO's styling evolved. The late 60s brought curvier lines and fastback shapes, while the early 70s saw bold colors and flamboyant details like the Judge package's rear wing and bright stripes. Yet even at its flashiest, the GTO retained a certain elegance. It never felt like it was trying too hard. That timeless design is part of why these cars still draw crowds at car shows today. 5. Functional hood scoops. Every GTO, from its start in 1964 to its last original run in 1974, had hood scoops. At first, they were mostly decorative, but they sure looked cool. Then came the real deal. The Ram Air Package in 1965-66 made those scoops functional, channeling fresh air straight into the carburetor for extra power. Only about 751 cars got this setup in 1967, making them rare and highly prized today. Beyond performance, those scoops gave the GTO a signature look. Even people who didn't know much about cars could tell, this was something special. 4. It carried pure class amid rough competition. Many muscle cars of the era were built cheap and simple, meant mainly for stoplight drag races. The GTO stood out by offering something more refined. Though based on the humble Tempest, Pontiac marketed the GTO as a step up. A sporty yet classy ride that still had real street cred. Inside you could get upscale touches, wood grain dash trim, bucket seats, and even a center console. It felt more grown up than a stripped-down drag racer like a Dodge Dart or Chevy Nova SS. This balance of power and style helped Pontiac build its image as GM's performance division, a reputation that lasted for decades. 3. Multiple iterations. The GTO wasn't frozen in time, it evolved with changing tastes and times. 1964-67, boxier, classy shapes with simple lines. 1968-70, sleeker fastbacks with more curves and bolder grills. 1970-71, flashy stripes, wings, and the legendary Judge package. 1973-74, more squared-off designs, and finally the compact Ventura-based GTO. Then decades later it came back in 2004 as a modern muscle coupe based on the Australian Holden Monaro. Though it looked different, it carried the same spirit. Big V8 power in a mid-sized package. That journey over the years makes the GTO more than just a single car, it's a living story. 2. An Australian resurrection. That surprised everyone. When Pontiac revived the GTO name in 2004, some old-school fans were skeptical. It was built on the Australian Holden Monaro platform, and looked more like a modern coupe than the classic GTOs. But under the hood, it packed real muscle. The LS1 V8 at first, then the even stronger LS2. With 350-400 horsepower, it could embarrass many newer sports cars at the time. Though its design wasn't as flashy, that simplicity was actually true to the original GTO's formula. Power first, look second. It only lasted until 2006, but it kept the flame alive, and reminded everyone how fun raw V8 power could be. 1. Its influence on modern muscle. The 1964 GTO kicked off the muscle car craze, but the story doesn't end there. By the early 2000s, traditional muscle cars were almost gone. The Camaro and Firebird ended in 2002, and Dodge was mostly selling front-wheel drive cars. But the GTO's return showed there was still passion for V8 rear-drive coupes. Not long after, Chrysler brought out the Charger and Challenger. Ford redesigned the Mustang in 2005 with retro styling that echoed its glory days. And Chevrolet revived the Camaro in 2010 after showing it as a concept in 2007. Even if the modern GTO didn't sell huge numbers, it proved something important. American drivers still cared about muscle cars, and that kept the segment alive for a new generation.